Hello there, good people. It is September and there are only a few months left in 2023, and I have a confession to make. I was actually working on a MacBook Pro 14 and 16 video all the way back in April, but I accidentally deleted the talking head footage, and with everything coming to the market back then, well, it's been a busy time. But I just got my hands on a Mac Studio, and so instead of a MacBook Pro review, we rather look at Apple's mainstream Pro lineup to see which one is right for you. What do you have to give up when going to a Mac Studio from a MacBook Pro, and would you gain any performance in the process? Before we get into the nitty-gritty details for our Apple Pro selection today, let's have a look at the spec sheets for each and every one of these puppies. Our MacBook Pro 16 is basically the decked out version, coming with the M2 Max, with the 38-core GPU option, 64GB of LPDDR5 6400 RAM and a 2TB NVMe SSD. And the already well-known 16-inch 120Hz mini LED display. Its smaller 14-inch brother, representing the still pretty fast but much more portable corner today, comes in with the M2 Pro with 19 GPU cores, 32GB of RAM, a 2TB SSD and a 14-inch mini LED screen variant of course. On the desktop side of things, we are dealing with the entry-level Studio here, coming in with the same M2 Max, but rather with the 30-core GPU option, 32GB of RAM and a mere 512GB SSD, which you should avoid completely, but more on that later. So let's compare two notebooks with a desktop machine, which is kinda something you can only do with Apple's lineup. Of course, the choice between a laptop and a stationary Mac is yours to make and depends on your individual use case. But given the chassis size of the Mac Studio, I would not completely rule it out for mobile use. While the two MacBooks of course absolutely win in this regard, I mean they are laptops after all, with keyboards, touchpads and screens. If you are someone traveling to a longer assignment, be it as a graphic designer, composer, photographer or something along those lines, well, you can easily throw that thing into a backpack or carry-on and set up shop almost anywhere. But truth to be told, I would guess that this will still be a very niche group of users. So yeah, the two MacBooks will still be the choice for the on-the-go peeps amongst you. Especially the 14-inch is insanely portable while still packing quite a bit of performance. In terms of build quality, well, we are talking Apple here, and there really isn't anything to complain about, no matter if you are eyeing one of their laptops or desktops. While Apple made up for some lost connectivity with the major MacBook Pro refresh in 2022, the Studio still has the edge regarding I/O. Both MacBooks share their 3 USB-Cs with Thunderbolt 4 functionality, the headphone jack, HDMI 2.1 and full-size SD card reader, while the Mac Studio adds another USB-C 4.0, 2 USB-C 10GB ports in the front, 2 additional USB-As and 10GB Ethernet. So if you ever run out of ports on this one, you are definitely doing something wrong. Before we get to the performance similarities and differences, let's touch quickly up on the areas that are exclusive to the MacBook Pros. Keyboards, touchpads, as well as the amazing displays of course. In terms of inputs, there's not too much to say. The keyboards offer a typing experience that most of you will quickly get used to, but the proper typists would probably wish for more travel. What about the trackpad? Well, it is simply the benchmark. While some Windows equivalents come close when it comes to the base functionality, Apple still has the advantage of deep OS integration that you will simply not find in the Windows world. On the display side of things, both MacBook Pros offer very decent brightness numbers, in SDR with around 500 nits, and be sure to have your sunglasses at the ready in HDR, since we measured almost 1500 nits. The OS feels extremely smooth thanks to the snappy 120Hz refresh rate that we would love to see become standard even in non-gaming laptops. We also have to give Apple credit for their automatic HDR implementation. While many Windows laptops are available with mini LEDs or even OLEDs in 2023 as well, HDR has to be activated manually. It comes with all sorts of everyday problems and profile mismatches, for example. Both color reproduction and color gamut coverage are excellent, but as it has been with last year's models already, we have not been able to calibrate both screens manually. The mini LED panels use PWM to regulate their brightness levels, but they do so with a very high frequency of almost 15 kHz, so even sensible users in this regard should not be affected. And if you want to get even deeper into our measurements, please make sure to head on over to our written reviews for these two. I will link all articles we did so far in the description below. Alright, so let's see how much you have to give up in terms of performance, noise and heat when going from a desktop to a laptop, because surely that is how it's going to be. Well, maybe. In terms of raw CPU grunt, the differences here are marginal at best, as is shown by our performance rating and in Cinebench R23 for example. And actually, both MacBook Pros are able to easily outperform the desktop Macs in our crossmark scores, which is especially impressive for the small 14-incher. But if we glance over to our SSD test, it becomes apparent why that is the case. The 512GB SSD in our base model Mac Studio is simply not able to hold a candle against the much faster drives found in our higher-end MacBook Pro SKUs. So if drive performance is essential to you, you might want to think about swallowing the eye-watering upcharge to at least 1TB. And then even the Studio should perform along the lines of its more portable siblings. In the GPU department it gets a lot more interesting, since this is also the part where our models differ much more severely from each other. In 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme Unlimited test, that 38-core GPU in the M2 Max found in our 16-inch MacBook Pro is easily doubling the score of its smaller brother, and can score a solid lead even over its desktop counterpart, so the additional GPU cores seems to do their job. In our remaining tests, the same story continues, with the Mac Studio and the M2 Max equipped MacBook Pro stomping on the smaller 14-incher, while the larger notebook can easily maintain its lead against the non-portable Mac as well. You might think, well, that's kind of obvious, since it's got more cores. And yes, that much is true, but it also means that it would seem like Apple's silicon isn't restricted by a laptop's cooling solution and power delivery. This in turn means the choice of your preferred Mac is not dictated by performance numbers, but rather depends on what kind of form factor you would want. While Macs aren't really known for their gaming prowess, even though there is some movement in this regard, I still ran Shadow of the Tomb Raider as a base of comparison. And here the differences between the two M2 Max SoCs is marginal, while both gain a solid lead once more against the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which can still deliver smooth frame rates in 1080p. When it comes to fan noise, Apple still has the absolute edge, and this holds true regardless of the form factor. In most use case scenarios, you will hardly ever hear the fans in any of the M-equipped laptops or the Studio. And only when you really push the CPU and the GPU will the fans make themselves audible. Even under full load, there aren't many Windows laptops that deliver a similar noise profile, and my mind is still blown after exporting one of our videos in Resolve 18 without hearing the fans at all. Another area in which the MacBooks reign supreme is battery life. Almost 13 hours of web surfing for the 14-inch or almost 15 hours for the 16-inch is unmatched for such powerful devices. That said, when you really push the SoCs, do not expect to use these puppies for more than an hour. But the same holds true for most Windows laptops, and the MacBooks still have the advantage of unthrottled performance on battery. Alright folks, so let's wrap this up for today. So which Mac is the right one for you? Well, as I said earlier, that really depends on what you want from your computing companion. Do you want something powerful but value portability above all else, then the MacBook Pro 14 should be on your shortlist. With an amazing screen, insane battery life and some serious computing grunt despite its size. Or do you want the ultimate mobile workstation and cost is not of a concern to you? Well, then it's tough to beat the overall package that is the decked out 16-inch MacBook Pro. It is expensive, especially with what Apple is charging for RAM and SSD upgrades, but boy, this thing delivers. Or would you rather just want a quiet, all-purpose desktop machine with loads of connectivity and more than enough performance for all sorts of use cases? Well, the Mac Studio is also very compelling in its own right. Let us know what would be your pick and why in the comments below. And stay tuned for our entry-level MacBook overview coming really soon as well. Be sure to leave a like and sub on your way out, and as always, for our detailed written reviews, head on over to our website. This shall be it for today. Thanks a ton for watching. My name is Alex, you have been fantastic, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.